Night.
5, 3, touchdown. Welcome home.
The mission may have had its flaws, but for the Space Shuttle Columbia and its crew, it was a picture-perfect landing. A graceful glide to Earth in the record books, touching ground and breaking new ground in the history of space travel.
From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Bob Schieffer.
Good evening. Astronauts Joe Engle and Richard Truly returned to Earth today, and as they came home, it marked the first time ever that a space vehicle had completed more than one mission. Terry Drinkwater reports from Edwards Air Force Base in California.
As the Columbia came down a dot over California, the weather was a mix of good and bad, like the mission itself. Some clouds, some blue skies. But the spacecraft functioned perfectly.
Good, solid bird all the way.
The shuttle's descent was steeper this time, 10,000 feet per minute. The ride bumpier, 90-mile-an-hour winds at this altitude. Among those who came to see it all with their own eyes, you could feel the tension, the concern. The sonic boom. On the final turn, a minute from touchdown, the Columbia was traveling at 330 miles an hour. At this point, the pilots were hands-on, flying the shuttle towards runway number 23. Split-second microwave scans back and forth from the ground told the onboard computer precisely where the Columbia was and how high. Then, seconds later, touchdown, or flare-out, as the pilots called it.
Welcome home. Thank you, Chase.
The shuttle weighs 100 tons. This feat of technology and men brought tens of thousands to the Mojave Desert to watch. Just think, it's marvelous. I can't believe it. Wow. Space fans were ecstatic. NASA and the astronauts were sounding almost as if the event was routine. To cool the shuttle down after its hot re-entry, some support vehicles sucked out warm air and pumped in cold. Others were to vacuum out toxic, even potentially explosive gases.
Crew is coming out of the
Engle and Truly had, of course, planned to be getting out of their spacecraft 3 days from now, had the mission gone its full length. But at least their landing was virtually flawless, and they were happy men indeed. From here, the astronauts returned by jet to Houston, and the shuttle ultimately to the Cape for its third trip to space and back. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Edwards Air Force Base, California.
At Mission Control in Houston tonight, they're already thinking about the next space shuttle mission by assessing what went wrong and right with this one. Morton Dean has our report on that.
We have ignition. We have ignition of the solid rocket boosters and liftoff.
The launch of the Columbia this week was a moment of major significance. While there's talk now of continuing to build disposable rockets, at this moment, the shuttle is America's future in space, the only space system available or planned for manned missions. It's absolutely essential to America's current military planning. The chancy nature of this flight was not completely diminished by the success of the first flight. This first of the seconds, as NASA Flight Director Neil Hutchison called it, plowed a lot of new ground. Let's go back and take a look at those engines igniting. The most sophisticated engines ever built, so long in developing, so troubled at first, used engines now, and they worked again. The astronauts were protected from the 2,000 and 3,000 degree temperatures during re-entry by thousands of tiles. If any one of some 10,000 tiles failed to do what it was supposed to do, the men in the machine might not have made it back to Earth. The tiles, most of them used tiles now, did what they were supposed to do, again. It must be emphasized that this was a test flight, an experimental flight. The feeling here at the Johnson Space Center has been that the basic ship, the basic design was okay. However, as is obvious, some real work has to be done to assure the dependability of some of the ship's component parts.
There has been a determination made that we are going to scrub for the day. We had 2 random failures in the same portion of an MDM.
This brings into play the mission rule
that calls for a minimum mission, a 54-hour mission with one fuel cell permanently offline.
Too many failures. Too many if the shuttle system is to become the space truck of the future, commuting to space on a dependable and fast turnaround schedule. Morton Dean, CBS News, Johnson Space Center, Houston.
Crew is coming out of the
You're not too young for Geritol. If you're not too young
to mind your baby brother,
not too young
to be a grandmother,
not too young
to be a working mother.
You're not too young for Geritol.
No, you're not too young for Geritol. Each Geritol tablet is a special combination of potent amounts of iron and lots of important vitamins.
You're not too young for Geritol.
Bell System Knowledge brings you a way to manage information more productively. Dimension PBX, a programmable electronic communication system for making critical connections more rapidly, increasing profits, controlling costs, saving energy, creating new information management possibilities for an endless variety of businesses. Dimension PBX from Bell.
President Reagan went turkey hunting today on the South Texas ranch of White House Chief of Staff James Baker. As he was leaving, a reporter asked if National Security Advisor Richard Allen would be retained on the White House staff. Our microphones couldn't pick up the president's response because of noise from the Jeep engine. But the reporters there said Mr. Reagan told them he couldn't comment because that is something under review. Allen popped into the news again yesterday when it was disclosed that he had received and placed in a White House safe $1,000 from a Japanese magazine that had obtained an exclusive interview with President Reagan's wife. Robert Shackney has today's developments on that.
Although yesterday he denied being the intermediary, today Richard Allen conceded he was the person who in fact had originally requested the interview with Mrs. Reagan for that Japanese magazine. In a written statement issued by the White House press office, Allen denied that meant he actually arranged the interview. All he did, he said, was pass on the request. Allen declined to meet with reporters today, but in his written statement he says, as to whether I asked for or ever expected to receive any honorarium, gratuity, or fee, the answer is categorically no. The statement leaves unexplained discrepancies between Allen's account and reports from Tokyo. A spokeswoman for the Japanese magazine told the Washington Post that the person who arranged the interview, otherwise unidentified, asked in advance about gratuities. But Allen says the $1,000 payment had not been requested and was accepted only to avoid embarrassment. Allen says he did not play a major role in setting up the interview, but interviewer Fuyoko Kamisaka told the Washington Post that the interview would have been impossible without Allen's help. A number of other questions put to the White House remain unanswered. Among them, why was the matter turned over to the FBI for investigation in the first place? How was the envelope containing the $1,000 supposedly found in a safe traced to Allen, and who actually discovered the money? The legal question is whether Allen, as a government official, violated law by accepting money in connection with his official duties. Because the matter is under review at the Justice Department, officials say they can't comment any further. Secretary of State Haig, along at odds with Allen, had another reason today for saying nothing.
You know, I don't know a damn thing about the subject.
Robert Shackney, CBS News, the White House.
The Republican National Committee has been meeting in Washington this week, and one official there told CBS newsman Martin Plissner the only good thing about the Richard Allen episode is that it took some of the attention off Stockman and Kelly. He was referring to Budget Director David Stockman, who offered to resign earlier in the week after an embarrassing incident in which, among other things, Stockman suggested that the president's economic plan had not been properly thought out. And the Kelly he cited was John Kelly, a Republican National Committee staffer who was suspended this week for questionable tactics in the recent governor's race in New Jersey. We have more on the Kelly story now from Karen Stone.
George Schneider launched a full-scale investigation of the Republican National Committee's activities in New Jersey. Their National Ballot Security Task Force hung signs like these and stationed workers wearing armbands at polls in 5 cities. John Kelly, shown here in a 1971 photo, was in charge of the task force. He apparently misrepresented his credentials to the Republican National Committee, and this week he was suspended with pay by the party. But Kelly dropped out of sight last week.
I've let the attorney know that I want to see Mr. Kelly as soon as possible in this office to discuss the matter with him.
Republicans say the signs and workers, some off-duty police officers carrying guns, were meant to ensure an honest election. Democrats charge they were aimed at discouraging black and other minority voters from casting traditionally Democratic ballots. A coalition of New Jersey groups is canvassing urban neighborhoods this weekend to find any residents who were prevented from voting. One voter said she saw people turned away from her polling place by a man wearing an armband.
And he was asking people for their voter's registration card. And if they didn't have their voter's registration card, then he didn't let them in the vote.
How many people do you think you saw him turn away?
At least 5.
The voter registration card is not needed to vote at New Jersey polls.
He just said that he was working for the Republican Party and that they had paid him $100 for the day.
Despite the New Jersey probe, the Republican National Chairman says his party will continue poll watching in other states.
We will indeed have a tough ballot security program in areas where we think we need it.
The chairman of the Democratic National Committee has asked for a federal investigation of the New Jersey election. Justice Department officials say they're considering that request. Karen Stone, CBS News, New York.
The 1984 political conventions are still more than 3 years away, but reliable sources told CBS News tonight that the Republican convention in all probability will be held in Dallas. Although the party has not yet even appointed a site selection committee, these sources say that top officials at the White House and the Republican National Committee have already decided Dallas is the site they want.
Bengay Extra Strength Balm for arthritis, for times when pain seems to grip you hard. Like damp days that bring throbbing pain and icy days when joints ache hard. Bengay Balm has a more powerful formula for temporary relief of minor arthritis pain and its stiffness. Strong pain relief you can trust from America's #1 arthritis rub. Break the grip of pain with Bengay Extra Strength Balm.
For some time now, General Motors has been talking with people who know cars.
I'm Bemis Ralphs, president of National Car Rental. And last year, we bought more than 50,000 cars and trucks. Most of them American and nearly 75% GM.
What about average GM buyers? When they replace their GM car bought new with another new car, 70% buy GM again. In the U.S., no other major car company, foreign or domestic, comes close. See your GM dealer today.
The biggest test so far of America's Rapid Deployment Force, Operation Bright Star, got underway today with a mass paratroop drop in the Egyptian desert. Mitchell Krause has the story.
The bright blue Egyptian sky was momentarily darkened by a fleet of transport planes and a flood of parachutes. First, 57 bundles of equipment, vehicles, and supplies. Then, 866 men of the 82nd Airborne Division who had flown directly from Fort Bragg, North Carolina to the drop site 7,000 miles away, traveling under a special diet and sleep regimen to minimize the effects of jet lag from the 14-hour trip. When they hit the ground in an area that had been softened up and marked by Thunderbolt fighters, they scurried away to set up defensive positions as if there were a hostile force in the area. They wore specially designed desert-colored uniforms and operated under a set of orders to test combat effectiveness in the harsh desert conditions. The whole drop operation took less than 6 minutes, and the area was reported secured shortly afterward. Only 4 injuries were sustained, and 1 equipment bundle was smashed. The men appeared happy it was over, although one of them had some trouble with his Middle East geography.
Well, it's exciting, especially coming back to the Holy Land. Just think all the ancient people used to walk here, and it's kind of weird jumping out of a plane and that.
CBS News has learned the operation was monitored by 1 AWACS plane overhead and partially controlled by another one over the Mediterranean. Egyptian and American officers and foreign military attachés watched from a grandstand. Lieutenant General Robert Kingston, whose Rapid Deployment Task Force planned the record-size exercise, outlined the ground rules for its use in a real war situation outside the United States.
We have to be invited in. Secondly, we will work in coordination and cooperation with the host countries. And thirdly, we have the capability to project sizable force in a limited time.
The bulk of Bright Star lies ahead. Combined training exercises with the Egyptians, followed by 3 days of air and land combat maneuvers, which the military planners here hope will lay to rest any doubts about the real effectiveness of the rapid deployment concept in any life or death situation in the Middle East. Mitchell Krause, CBS News in the Egyptian desert west of Cairo.
As Operation Bright Star began, Egypt's traditional 40-day period of mourning for the assassinated Anwar Sadat came to a close. Sadat's family, led by his widow Jahan, visited his tomb, also paying their respects were Iran's former Empress Farah, looking gaunt and tired, her son Reza Pahlavi, and 2 presidents, Mubarak of Egypt and Numeri of the Sudan. Those charged with killing Sadat go on trial a week from today. There have been mass protests against nuclear weapons throughout Western Europe, but today there was one in Eastern Europe. About 100,000 people protesting at a government-sponsored rally in Bucharest, Romania. It was billed as the biggest peace demonstration ever held in an Eastern Bloc country. Observers said it did not have an anti-American tone. Romania's leader has called for both the Soviet Union and the United States to abandon ideas of a nuclear arms buildup in Europe. The Navy christened another of the huge new Trident-class nuclear super submarines today. This latest one is the USS Florida, christened at Groton, Connecticut. About 400 protesters demonstrated outside the main gates at the Electric Boat Yard. The first of the Trident subs, the Ohio, was commissioned only 4 days ago, and the second Trident, the Michigan, goes into service in about a year.
I refinished this beautiful piece all by myself. And I can't even change a light bulb.
A pro wanted $300 to refinish this. I did it myself for $15.
Formby's furniture refinisher can make a believer out of you because it works unlike anything you've ever seen. It dissolves old varnish lacquer shellac without stripping, sanding, or scraping. With my furniture refinisher, it's a pleasure to create a treasure.
Homer Formby. No one knows wood as good. Look for special values on Formby's complete refinishing and care kit.
So that's your secret. On TV, you drink Sanka brand decaffeinated coffee. But at home, it's ground roast. That's ground. Such rich flavor and aroma. This has to be ground roast. It's ground? What is this great coffee? Come on, your secret's safe with me. Promise? Sanka ground roast? I love it. Your secret's safe with me.
Sanka decaffeinated coffee. Enjoy it fresh perked.
Near Texas Creek, Colorado today, 7 people were killed and 3 badly burned after a gasoline tanker sideswiped a truck on a mountain highway, then exploded and shot flames 1,000 feet down the road, engulfing at least 1 passing car. Police said all 5 passengers in the car were among the dead. In Belfast, IRA gunmen today assassinated a hardline Protestant member of the British Parliament at a crowded community center. The gunman killed the Reverend Robert Bradford, an outspoken foe of the IRA and a close friend of another Protestant hardliner, the Reverend Ian Paisley. The gunman also killed the community center's caretaker. The IRA says that it killed Bradford for his role in Ulster's sectarian violence. Only a few hours earlier in London, the IRA claimed responsibility for planting a bomb that damaged the home of Sir Michael Havers, Britain's Attorney General and Chief Legal Officer. Havers and his family were away at the time, and there was no one else at home. A fight over whether a landmark church in New York City can sell some Park Avenue property for construction of a skyscraper has escalated from a battle between opposing factions in the church into a fascinating case that could wind up at the Supreme Court. Joan Snyder has that story.
Services at St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church in Manhattan. Serene, harmonious. But the serenity is only on the surface. St. Bartholomew's faces a crisis that has divided its members, brought a flurry of lawsuits, and set its leaders on a collision course with landmark preservationists, a conflict with nationwide implications. St. Bartholomew's clergy and elected lay officers, saying that the church desperately needs money, have proposed leasing part of its Park Avenue property for construction of a huge office tower. The church itself would not be touched, but its adjoining community house, a center for social and educational programs, would be torn down and replaced by a 59-story building. Just the facade would be saved. Because the entire Byzantine-style complex has been designated an historic landmark, protected by city landmark preservation laws, the proposal has called preservation groups to arms.
This is a national catastrophe that we face. It isn't just a New York City catastrophe. If this were to happen in New York City and to the landmark law of New York through the actions of St. Bartholomew's, it could happen all across the United States. Nothing would be safe.
Preservation groups have banded together for a legal fight, supported by a barrage of newspaper editorials and articles, contending that a skyscraper would choke off the last remaining oasis on Park Avenue, dwarf the church, and mutilate a priceless architectural treasure. But the issue goes way beyond architecture in the view of church leaders, who say the survival of the church as a vital social force is at stake.
Many politically powerful forces, secular forces, are arrayed against us. But they know that we will win.
At the eye of the storm is St. Bartholomew's rector, Thomas Bowers, who says the church must have new income or go broke within 8 years. Nobody worried about filling the collection plates when the church first opened its doors in 1918. A lot of millionaires walked in those days, and there used to be a saying around New York that to be truly fashionable, a person needed two things: a box at the opera and a pew at St. Bartholomew's. But as office buildings replaced residences on Park Avenue, many wealthy parishioners moved away. And St. Bartholomew's leaders say its income can no longer keep up with inflation, repair bills, and the cost of running wide-ranging community programs. The leasing arrangement on its land, one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in the world, would bring in $9.5 million a year for the first 10 years, with increases after that over the course of a 100-year lease. With all that money, church leaders say, they could not only ensure St. Bartholomew's future, but also carry out a ministry to the poor and desperate around the city, feeding the hungry and sheltering the homeless.
I think that theologically we're called by our Lord to consider every resource we have, not to bury them in the ground in a sense, but to use them in the work of the church. A building is not the church. The church are the people, always the people. There are people that sleep up beside this building every night. People have to look at that problem. The church can't just ignore that, worship in glory and splendor and say, oh, well, too bad about those poor people. The church will lose its soul if it doesn't care about that. Who else is going to care? Who else really cares? What do you think we're here for? I mean, that's why we're here.
It's just pie in the sky. We'd like to have a lot of money to give away to the poor. We think it's highly suspicious.
Armstrong and others insist that the church is a lot richer than the rector says and could raise any money it needs.
They charge that the rector wants to make a real estate killing, primarily to finance a television ministry. Bowers says any television program he has would be a low-cost cable operation and has nothing to do with the real estate project. The parish will vote on the proposal next week. Bowers is confident of winning and obviously has a lot of support.
I think it makes a difference between just kind of sticking your head in the sand and gradually disappearing and really making a difference to the world.
Both sides vow to fight on to the Supreme Court, if necessary, for a ruling on St. Bartholomew's contention that landmark laws are unconstitutional when applied to a church because they deprive it of free practice of religion. Such a ruling would affect the many landmarks owned by churches and other religious institutions across the country. The controversy has become so heated that guards have been hired to protect the model on display at the church. The rector says he has even received anonymous telephone threats on his life.
Peace and joy I'll surely find, and for the promised land.
Inside the church, the young people still sing of peace and happiness. Outside, the battle may go on for years. Joan Snyder, CBS News, New York.
He was the kind of a guy who didn't expect much from today's small cars, just practicality, nothing more. Then he saw the 1982 Oldsmobile Omega and realized he'd been expecting too little. This four-cylinder, front-wheel drive Olds Omega had style. He could imagine the luxury inside, the smooth, quiet ride. Olds Omega, he smiled. Even today, there's still room to do it with style.
When Europeans get together with friends, they serve their wine in a carafe. Thanks to Paul Masson, we can enjoy this same tradition. Paul Masson's attractive carafe, an easy way to enjoy our great wines, like cool, delicious Paul Masson Chablis, rich, mellow Burgundy, or delightful Rosé. The Paul Masson carafe. The time has come for this great way to serve a great wine.
An unusual auction in London today. Music boxes of all sizes and descriptions went on the block, but they all had something in common. All of them were made in the days before music was just a radio dial away, and all were owned by one man who was prepared to lose them rather than lock them away in silence. John Blackstone reports.
Their sound alone stirs nostalgia. To see them working stirs wonder. It took a special kind of ingenuity to make music automatically in the days before polyvinyl discs and magnetic tapes. The Phonolist Violina is a player piano and a self-playing violin combined. The 500 mechanical music makers auctioned today all belong to just one young man, Claes Friberg from Denmark, 36 years old. He's selling everything from his mechanical music museum in Copenhagen because the museum building is being torn down and he won't put his treasures into storage.
These things want to be enjoyed. It's sort of, you know, they have their own life in a way. They want to be played every day.
And so today there was a gathering of others fascinated by the machines that made music from about 1870 to 1930. They came to London to buy up Friberg's collection.
£35,000 anymore, selling then at £35,000. Are you all finished? Well, sir?
£35,000, about $65,000 for the player piano with automatic violins. Each piece was the same, nostalgia and wonder. John Blackstone, CBS News, London.
And all the sale of Friberg's collection fetched about $650,000. That's the news. I'm Bob Schieffer, CBS News, New York. Good night.
Hot. Hair that's shiny hot. That's the look you get with Alberto VO5 hot oil treatment. Hair that's shimmering, soft, and sexy hot. VO5's professional formula is different. It's heat activated to professionally restore healthy texture, manageability, and shine, even to damaged hair. Heat activates VO5's conditioners to penetrate hair more thoroughly. VO5 hot oil treatment. You add the heat, we do the rest. Hot.
The United States Postal Service handles 300 million pieces of mail a day. Well, that's their job. But that doesn't mean you have to put your important business letter into that pile. Now you have an alternative. Introducing the Federal Express Overnight Letter. It costs only $9.50 when you drop it off, and it gets delivered practically any place in the country overnight. Absolutely, positively.
From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Bob Schieffer. Tomorrow's guest on Face the Nation will be Murray Wiedenbaum, Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. Sundays.